Here's a definition of environmental toxin. They are made by human processes, and they're some type of substance that damages humans and other living organisms. Toxicology is the study of those substances and their effects on organisms. Environmental toxins can enter the human body through the air that we breathe, going into our respiratory system, our lungs, and thus our bloodstream. The food we eat also getting into our bloodstream. The water we drink, personal care products we use, they all can get into our blood and move all around our body and cause problems with different tissues. Here are the definitions of two different types of toxin exposure, acute or chronic. Some of these environmental toxic substances can dissolve in water, and some not in water but only in fat. And the fat-soluble toxins are particularly dangerous in the sense that in an organism's body they can accumulate inside fatty tissues and become more concentrated than even the dose that the organism was exposed to. And they can accumulate up to a level that even though the exposure wasn't toxic, the levels that they concentrate into in the fatty tissue can become higher and become up to a toxic level and then cause damage.
Bioaccumulation is a process that takes place in a single organism, usually over the span of its life. When that organism gets exposed to an environmental toxin and that environmental toxin is ingested or gets inside the body of that organism, it can be stored, sometimes in fatty tissue and otherwise. And as that organism later gets exposed again to more of that toxin can be stored, and the concentration of that toxin can increase inside that organism and get higher and higher during the lifetime of that organism. What can also happen is at some point the concentration of that toxin, whereas at the beginning it wasn't really damaging, it hadn't hit this threshold, and after you get to a certain level or concentration of that toxin, it's above that threshold and the body can't take it and cannot fight it off or degrade it, and it starts to do its damage. That's the process of bioaccumulation. In biomagnification, this is something whereby that environmental toxin increases in the amount and concentration, but it happens not in one individual organism's lifespan, as in bioaccumulation, but it happens as that biochemical moves through the food chain, that toxin. So here is an example of, you could have a toxic chemical like a PCB that came from an industrial process that gets into a river, gets into the sediment in seawater, plankton uptake it, invertebrates uptake the plankton, fish eat the invertebrates, seabirds eat the fish, and marine mammals eat some of the seabirds. And by the time you get all the way to the marine mammal, you have a very high amount and high concentration or more magnified amount of that toxin because it has moved up the food chain. That's biomagnification.
Another phenomena to consider is the chemical interactions of different toxins. Let's say you have toxin A and toxic B in a water source or in the soil. Those two toxins can have an additive effect, being A, a certain amount of effect affects the performance of that organism, B affects it a certain amount, and A and B together, both present in that soil, those would have an effect that was additive. The amount of effect of A and B just summed. And antagonistic effects of those two environmental toxins both present could reduce the overall effect in associated organisms. That's antagonistic, kind of one toxin fights the other. Synergistic is both of those toxins together could cause a much more than an additive effect. It can cause an effect that's greater than the effect of both of those two singly. So that's what synergistic is. The Toxics Release Inventory created by the EPA is a way for you to find out about what's happening regarding environmental toxins in your local area. You can learn about chemical releases and pollution prevention activities that are reported by the industrial companies and by federal facilities. So look for that if you're coming to a new area to live. It's important for you to know about it for your health. Allergens can be considered toxic substances. Obviously not pollen, unless sometimes pollen is from an invasive species. It's foreign. That can happen too, but dust, human-made allergens, soot, smog, they're foreign substances that are in the air. They're unnatural and they affect humans through their respiratory system. Your body has a response. It produces antibodies that are made to defend against these foreign substances, and those fight those off, except they can also cause the antibody or antihistamine response, and it can cause kind of a cascade of problems in humans, these allergens, and other organisms too. So what is meant by the saying that dose makes the poison? This is a known dynamic that's been around for a long time. What it means is there's plenty of foods that are fine to ingest and they have low levels of environmental toxins or toxic substances naturally in them, like plants in the tomato family or potato, same family. They have solanine, and that is toxic at a certain level. There's formaldehyde that's produced in things like pears, amygdalin in apples, cucurbitacin in squashes. Those all are toxic for humans, but not at a low level. So at a certain level, they become toxic. Take, for example, common milkweed. Most people know that this is a toxic plant. You shouldn't eat it. Some call it poisonous. We know that monarch caterpillars are able to ingest the leaves of the milkweed, and they take those toxins, which are called cardiac glycosides, and they compartmentalize them in their bodies so they're not just flowing around damaging it. It keeps them in special areas that it doesn't hurt the rest of the caterpillar. And then they also are using that as defense, so birds know and learn that they are toxic to eat these caterpillars because of the toxins they've gotten from the milkweed. But meanwhile, like some of my research and work that I've done with native peoples in the Midwest, they eat the milkweed, cook it like asparagus, the young shoots, and eat it. So is it really toxic? Well, they prepare it and cook it until the toxins are mostly cooked out of it. So a little bit of the toxins actually, by a lot of these native peoples, is thought to be beneficial. The cardiac glycosides make your heart pump faster. A little bit is kind of like a stimulant, can kind of get you up and going. A lot could make you have a heart attack. So a little bit is beneficial, a lot is basically toxic. And similar to the milkweed example, what about caffeine itself? Caffeine's great. It's a stimulant. It's fun, makes you feel good. Not necessarily bad for you at low and moderate levels. But it also can be fatal and be a poison if too much is taken in. Here it's saying a single shot of espresso has about 64 milligrams of caffeine, but a toxic dose would be like 78 shots, and that would kill you. So gosh, that's a lot. Let's talk about a few examples of environmental toxins that do bioaccumulate in sea organisms and also moving up and biomagnify in humans by humans ingesting those sea creatures. PCBs, or polychlorinated biphenyls, are highly carcinogenic. They're chemical compounds that are used or were used in industrial and consumer products and product production. They were banned in 1976 by the Toxic Substances Control Act when we found out how damaging they were, and by the International Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants, and that was back in 2001. So the primary route of exposure of PCBs to most people is through foods, particularly fish and poultry, where this fat-soluble chemical bioaccumulates in those organisms. Then when humans eat it, they biomagnify. These toxins are stored in the fatty tissues and accumulate there, and that's where they cause damage too. Sadly, these PCBs are very persistent in the environment once they get out there, and they can travel all over the world through ocean currents and some atmospheric too. A study was done of Quebec women, mostly remote Inuit people and women, and they found the PCBs in their breast milk, and these people are nowhere near where these PCBs are produced or even used much. So they have traveled and spread all over the place and concentrated in the fatty tissue of whales and things that are eaten by the Inuit people. Neurotoxins are another category of environmental toxins that affect normal functioning of human nervous systems and also other organisms' nervous systems. Things like heavy metals, like lead, can kill the nerve cells directly. DDT is something that can disrupt nerve cell membranes. Organophosphates inhibit signal transmission between the cells, tissues, organs, and muscles. PCBs are one of those. Mutagens are chemicals, agents that damage or alter the genetic material, the DNA, that can lead to birth defects or later in life tumor growth. It doesn't have to be just a chemical, it could be something like radiation from the sun. So infectious agents, chemicals, radiation can all cause DNA to be altered and sometimes damaged to an extent that it affects the functioning of that organism. And sometimes it makes cells start to divide in a crazy rate, and that would be the kind that produce tumors. A common one is called teratogen, and that causes abnormalities in the embryonic development of organisms. Like alcohol, overabundance of alcohol in the bloodstream can damage DNA and cause fetal alcohol syndrome in unborn children. As you probably know, hormones are made by your body to regulate the development of your body and the function of tissues and organs, and a way one part of your body can communicate with the other. Different organs can kind of regulate each other. But these hormones and the production of them can be disrupted by chemicals like DDT or PCBs, other environmental toxins, and interfere with yours or any organism's functioning. Persistent organic pollutants, or POPs, like I said, can cause problems, and they can hang out in the environment for a long time. Dicamba is a current ingredient in some weed killing herbicides, and it's highly soluble in water, making it extremely mobile in the soil and aquatic systems. So it can easily contaminate groundwater, and it has a tendency to drift into nearby fields, damaging crops, the things that we don't want to kill with herbicides. Especially ones that aren't genetically engineered to be dicamba resistant, so it can damage neighbor non-target crops. Also, there's other pesticides that are like that too, and these all have danger to non-target organisms and the soil and humans. One thing that's really interesting about these environmental toxins is how humans view them and their relative risk of them. In general, we tend to downplay risks that are related to things that we care about or like to do, and exaggerate the risk of things that are, they're not related to us or what we like to do. So if it's something that we do a lot, let's say you like to swim in rivers a lot, we tend to kind of brush off the fact that there might be some pollution in there, or maybe giardia, or some danger from rapids. People tend to downplay that. Meanwhile, they're exaggerating of risks that are not related, like, oh, what's happening in the ocean environment or in the air. So our perception of risk is important to think about too, and how we actually approach some of these risks of environmental toxins. I know for myself with some foods that I like, I don't really want to think about the possibility of the toxins in them and I just want to eat them. So that's kind of one way that I would downplay that of something I like. Whereas I might think like, oh, no one should have shellfish because they bioaccumulate PCBs. I would maybe get more up in arms about that because I don't like shellfish. So it's just something to think about.